There's a really interesting and I think important trial currently underway in a state court in Florida, in which CNN is being sued for defamation by an individual who it appears was the subject of a false and reputationally damaging story. And this plaintiff has not only succeeded in getting to a trial, the trial is underway, I believe it's concluded, and the jury now has the case where they're deliberating. But he's also seeking punitive damages because he was able to present evidence that CNN didn't just lie about him, but did so with malice. Professor Jonathan Turley is a law professor at George Washington University. He is one of the most prominent and I think one of the most informed media voices when it comes to telling us about legal cases and legal issues. He has a whole variety of credentials that I've gone through many times before. He's the author of The Indispensable Right, Free Speech in an Age of Rage, and he joins us to discuss this CNN case as it struggles through a $1 billion defamation lawsuit and what it might mean for the media more broadly. Professor Turley, always great to see you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be with you, Glenn.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you're here. So this case has actually gotten less attention than it arguably deserves, and I don't say that judgmentally. This is the first time we're covering it as well, probably because there's so many other big news events taking place. But it certainly is significant, but I don't think a lot of people are very familiar even with the basics. Can we just start with the CNN segment itself, what it is exactly that they allege that triggered this defamation lawsuit?
Well, it boils down to this period, obviously, when we were pulling out of Afghanistan. There was panic. There was very little warning at the end how fast it was going to be. So you had a bunch of Afghan citizens that were trying very hard to get out of that country at the risk of their own lives. Various groups sort of sprung up, including people who had been in the special forces and the military, who were using different means to get people out. One of them was this individual, and Zachary Young was running an operation to get folks out. There was a charge. But what he was charging was in line with what other people were encountering as expenses. But what really came out of this was an attack piece on CNN that zeroed in on him. It was on Jake Tapper's program, and it focused on Zachary Young. And it referred to his operation as a black market operation, basically accused him of something akin to human trafficking. And it had many of the signatures that we have seen for so long in dealing with the media and these gotcha pieces. They decided just to reach out to him with roughly 2 hours before airtime. And that's an old trick, as you know, by many in the media, particularly the print media, so that they could say there was no response from the individual. And in this case, to their chagrin, I think, Young responded. And this led to emails that were quite profane, saying that, he had responded, but also saying that we're going to bury this guy, referring to him with all types of profanity, showing real malice here in the emails. There was never any evidence against Young himself or his company that he was engaged in these types of black market operations. They also suggested that what he was doing was unlawful. So when they eventually went to court, CNN really made an unholy mess of this. I mean, I teach defamation in law school, and this is almost a case study of how not to defend a defamation case. In fact, they had to replace their lead counsel after she argued that it wasn't false to say that it was unlawful because it violated Taliban law. And that took a lot of people by surprise and said, really, is that CNN standard that this is unlawful according to the Taliban? And that didn't go over well with the judge. And the judge ruled against CNN in a series of motions. So the case was going rather badly for CNN, and it got a lot worse this week. You first had Jake Tapper.
So let me interrupt you there because I want to get into that in detail, what's actually happening now. But I just want people to understand the kind of legal framework a little bit better to understand why this is such an unusual event. So in general, it's actually quite hard to sue media outlets for defamation, particularly so if either you're a public figure, and I don't know what the status of Zachary Young has been ruled to be. I don't think he's a public figure, but you know better than I in terms of what he's been said to be in that regard in this case. But also when you're suing for punitive damages, you have a much higher standard as well. You have to, as you said, show actual malice. And often what happens is even when media outlets lie, and everyone knows they lie, the court knows they lie, they still throw the case out on the grounds that it's impossible to prove the necessary malice or the mindset that you have to show that media outlets wanted. Why has this case, and you would assume, but I guess it's inaccurate in this case, that CNN would have very good lawyers, and it doesn't seem like they do. They've had to switch them, which you know about. But how did it get so far to the point where we're now not only in the middle of a trial, but the trial is concluded and the jury has the case and is deliberating?
Well, first of all, the record in the case was replete with what seemed to be open malice. I mean, you had these producers promising to bury this guy, and one producer saying, "I'm going to take that as a promise." You had them giving him virtually no time to respond, and when he did, they made no real changes. And then to make matters worse for them, when they were at trial, these producers testified that they didn't even think when CNN finally came out with a statement that really we didn't mean to suggest he was part of the black market. All these producers testified in front of this jury, we didn't want them to do that. We don't think it's warranted. And observers said that they felt that the jury was moving quickly away from CNN. But what was most outstanding was the impact on the judge, because there was a series of mistakes that culminated this week, where the judge responded to the CNN's lead counsel by saying, "You have basically zero credibility with me." I mean, that's never a good sign. But it came after the CNN counsel was waving around a document saying that it was a smoking gun, showing that Young was lying about not being able to get a job. Well, that document turned out just to be an application for the renewal of his security clearance. And he ended up not getting it. And the judge was irate and said that you really need to give him an apology, and I need to decide what to do here. So all of that really established, I think, for the judge, certainly the early stuff, evidence of potential actual malice. But as you say, Glenn, one of the issues here is an outstanding debate about New York Times versus Sullivan, where the standard you described was first honed. That was with regard to public officials. And in New York Times versus Sullivan, Justice Brennan wrote a really beautifully written opinion where he said, look, we have to give a little bit of breathing room for the media and for the public in criticizing public officials. And basically said, look, this is the life you chose. When you ran for office, you had to understand that people would say things about you that might be untrue, but we want to give some breathing space for that to happen. Well, that opinion really made sense to a lot of people. It was sort of perfecting democracy. But then later, the court extended it to what are called public figures. And those are people who are celebrities or others in the news, and said, well, and the court said, this is a celebrity-driven country that we have. Celebrities are actually more powerful than most public officials. So they said, for celebrities as well, for public figures, you also have to shoulder this higher burden, which means that people could say things about you that they wouldn't be able to say about ordinary people. And some of us have questioned that. I don't see why, if you're a Kardashian or you're a CEO or you're a football coach, why you should have to shoulder a higher burden than other people when people have lied about you.
Yeah, and I think it's worth underscoring there, too, for people who might be hearing that and saying, why should media outlets get this special standard, this kind of breathing room? It's true in a lot of professions. If a physician or a surgeon makes a mistake and it results in harm or even death to the patient, there's a standard that says just a mere mistake, kind of good faith mistake, isn't sufficient. It has to be the sort of thing that really widely deviates from standard medical practice. Same with lawyers, same with a lot of professions, because you don't want people constantly petrified of being able to do their job or even taking some risk because of fear that there's going to be constant lawsuits. I guess the thing that has surprised me here, having spent the last week or so familiarizing myself with this case, you're writing on it, people who have been reporters in the courtroom, is in my own experience, when you have a case like this and you're representing a plaintiff against a big corporation and you're asking for a lot of money and the corporation is suffering a series of losses as a defendant, oftentimes, usually in fact, this type of case will settle before it goes to trial. And then if you get to trial somehow and you're clearly winning and the corporation is suffering a lot of losses to the point where the judge is saying, my faith in you, the lawyer for this massive corporation, CNN, is at zero, it's almost inconceivable to me that CNN wouldn't be offering enough money that almost forces Mr. Young to accept just because of the amount of money being offered. I don't know if you have information about this or maybe just informed speculation, but why do you think that's not happening here?
Well, first of all, I just want to warn the engineers, we're getting feedback, so it's hard to understand, but I got the gist of your question, Glenn. And it is a mystery as to why CNN decided to push this case this far, and they did not settle. I think it is because media generally win these cases, but as I've explored on my blog, there's a lot of cases now that have been going against the media, from the New York Times to CNN. There are cases that have been surviving these challenges because of malice showings. And that is, I think, something quite indicative. In my book, The Indispensable Right, I have a chapter on the media and how advocacy journalism has taken over from objectivity and neutrality to the point that you have many leading editors at newspapers rejecting objectivity. That's the new thing in J schools, to say that objectivity and neutrality are sort of old news, no pun intended. That has led to a lot of these problems, because once you get rid of objectivity and neutrality, then you've got advocacy and malice, and that tends to remove the protections that you have under these cases. What's happening with CNN is a particularly interesting case study, because they were very aggressive in opposing this individual on a record that was not very good. But they also alienated the judge. So the way these things happen is that if you're a defense attorney, you've got to worry first about the verdict against your client, but also the size of the award. If the award is too high, you put in a motion for remittitor, which is a motion to reduce the award, which a judge can do. A judge can't increase the award, but he or she can reduce it. Well, when you have a judge saying your credibility with me is zero, it means that fallback position has become a lot worse. And so it is surprising that CNN has not changed its approach to this case.
And some of the evidence is terrible for CNN. I mean, there's even emails saying this guy has such a punchable face. I mean, really talking about him with a level of contempt that really reeks of malice. In a world where our digital lives are under constant threat, did I not just say that? I was just talking about that. It's not enough to just protect your crypto. You need a comprehensive security solution that covers all your digital assets. That's where Ledger comes in. Ledger has been a pioneer in digital security for 10 years. Trusted by 7 million users and securing 20% of the world's digital assets. Their latest devices, Ledger Stacks and Ledger Flex, feature the world's first secure touchscreens, making managing your crypto and logins incredibly easy. But Ledger goes beyond hardware wallets. With the Ledger Security Key app, you can say goodbye to weak passwords and protect your online accounts with robust security keys. Ledger's comprehensive suite of products and services gives you complete control over your digital identity and assets. Experience the future of digital security, the future, not the past, not even the present, the future of it you can experience and take control of your entire digital life, not part of it, your entire digital life. Buy your Ledger device now at shop.ledger.com/Greenwald. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.